Good evening. Welcome to MarketWatch 360. And tonight, it's such a pleasure and having our guests, Alika and Max from Dragon Theater. And we're going to have a great conversation tonight. We already warmed up a little bit. And then stay tuned. And we're going to have some great news about upcoming shows. And then, we'll go from there. And then, welcome to the show. And how have you been?
Busy.
Yes, good,
Very
but
busy.
very busy.
Great, in a good way, right?
Yes.
Wow, then you have to share your secrets with our audiences tonight.
You got it. Don't stop, I guess.
Okay, so tell us about what Dragon Theater is about and the history of it.
So Dragon is a nonprofit theater. It was founded 20 years ago by Meredith Hagedorn, and Max and I took over in 2019, and 2020 was gonna be our season. Lucky us.
It was still
our season, I would say.
It was just not the one we planned. And we are what we are has changed a little bit over the course of 2020, but the Dragon has been a small black box theater company that produces sort of off the beaten path productions, and that provides opportunities for especially earlier career artists to be able to put on and co-produce their passion projects with support and sort of seed funding from the Dragon. Over the last year, that's the part of the company that we've really leaned into, and sort of have been really pivoting towards becoming a platform for community organizers and artists to be able to share the things and the stories that they care about.
Was it a surprise? And when you just took the ownership and then COVID hit?
Big surprise. Oh yeah, I think it surprised everybody.
We had big ambitious plans for the year.
Sure did.
And I suppose for the first hot moment when we thought it was going to be 2 weeks, it was a little bit of a relief. We were like, yeah, we'll catch our breath and really consider how much we've bitten off for this very ambitious
season.
Our year season. And then things changed.
And 2 weeks turned into a year and a half. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So how has COVID been impacting your business?
Great question. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it definitely forced us to be even more creative than we were initially, to really think outside the box. And
outside the black box.
yes, and almost try to get out of our own way, because everybody was so scared and it was just so uncertain at the beginning, and so it was a big leap of faith, I think, for the Dragon.
Yeah, it was, and it became about the question of, we are a nonprofit organization, which means that at the end of the day, our mandate is to serve. And what do we do with that at a time of crisis? Do we hunker down and hold on to our, what we considered at the time to be meager resources and sort of wait it out? Or do we reinvest it and try to meet the challenge of the crisis of our time? And for us, the choice was to try to reinvest whatever resources we had in meeting the challenge of the time, in creating artistic opportunities for the folks who really needed that outlet and the income, and to also walk the walk about the conversation that happens in our world a lot of how the arts help people, how the arts are what we need in a time of crisis. And we wanted to be able to point to something greater than yeah, you watch Netflix when you're depressed or when you're stuck at home.
Yeah.
Because the arts are how we have the difficult conversations in our
right.
society.
Well, I love that. I love that you just mentioned about arts can be very powerful in the healing process.
Yes.
I love that point. Yeah.
Mhm.
And did you ever, like you two, did you ever have a down moment when COVID hit?
Down as in like we weren't doing anything, or
Yeah, it was like, wow, I don't know what to do, and how are we gonna pivot? And did you guys ever have that moment?
I think there were many little moments,
Several.
several moments.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm super grateful that you are here helping run this company. I don't think I could have done it alone, and I don't think you could have done it alone.
No.
So the partnership was, I think, really helped us get through.
Yeah, and I mean, just our team and so many human beings who just stepped up and said,
Yeah.
you guys are trying to do something that no one else is really doing right now. So I think some of it had to do with we didn't know what we were doing or what to do, but my trauma reaction, instead of shutting down, tends to be to try to do everything. At the same time that I can think of, and to try to do something that will make things better. And there wasn't really making things better, but we were doing whatever we could think of. I think the first thing we did was I said, okay, everyone's stuck in their homes alone and drinking alone, so we will do a live stream where I bring out a bottle of booze and my cup and invite people to jump into a Zoom call or into the chat so that they're not at home by themselves and there's just like some company. And so we were down and not knowing what to do, but we invited people into that process with us. And that, that did so much. We had some volunteers who came aboard and worked full time for the Dragon for free, just to help us out because they cared about the idea that the arts can help heal during a crisis and the idea that maybe we should be, trying to find ways and solutions for artists who want desperately to be doing something right now.
To create.
I think it was because you were really aware of taking leadership, and you really put things and your people on your shoulder.
Yes. So.
Yeah, and that could be the reason that people will be inspired by you, and then that's what you just mentioned. Then they were willing to work for you for free. As a full-time, right? And which is not easy. And I think it, like you said, that people attract like-minded, right? And then so you mentioned that Dragon Theater has been doing something very different from the market. So what are the things that you did were different?
I think the biggest thing was how we thought about our money in terms of the unknown of when are we going to go back to our building versus the, what we had in the bank account and how we budgeted stuff. And we were very fortunate. Our landlords and property management company, and, we had so many conversations and they were like, we're on your side, you guys. Like, we want to make sure that you're here when we're on the other side of this. And so what we were able to do was the Dragon had an incredible amount of liability in rent that we were paying monthly when we took over the company. And that was sort of one of the challenges we were trying to work through and how to make that make sense with arts and a 60-seat theater. And then we were able to take all of that money and instead of we're not going to spend it at all, we said, we're going to spend it on people. Because right now, most of our friends who are freelance artists are out of work. And there was that period where we didn't know if unemployment benefits were going to extend to them. And we didn't know what was going to happen to most of these folks. So it became really important to, instead of hunkering down, just sort of throwing stuff at the wall. And I think that was very different. That allowed us to sort of get a little bit ahead on the technology, and from there try to share what we learned, so that as people were recovering from the shell shock of that initial moment of the pandemic, that we could give them the resources and the knowledge that we had in sort of navigating making arts in the pandemic with as many people as we could.
So financial decisions really made a difference.
Mm-hmm.
In people.
And in our ability to make those financial decisions,
Yeah.
because we were very lucky with sort of our rent situation and the folks that we were working with.
Mm-hmm. So did you look for any resources for financial support?
Yes, we did. And there has been, several federal, state, and county and city level programs that have been incredibly helpful for nonprofit arts and for small businesses. There have been, some interesting stories. We had a big turnover in sort of our board leadership as part of this process because of risk averseness and sort of varying degrees of that within our staff versus the board. And it took us a while to be able to apply to, for example, the PPP loans and things like that, because there was some education that we had to do internally to understand exactly what the liabilities that we were on the hook for and things like that. But it's definitely true that without the Redwood City Arts Commission, the San Mateo Arts Commission, the California Nonprofit Arts Relief Grant, our doors would be closed,
by now. Yeah.
So, yes.
Yeah, so they have been helping a lot. Okay, so how did you pivot, the in-person show online? What are the creativities that you have been doing?
I think we went through some stages. I think at first it was like, what can we do? And, we have to find things that are within public domain, because we can't pay, the playwrights or anything like we used to do. And so we started with very small, with just you reading Edgar Allan Poe, and it just kind of evolved from there.
Yeah, and there was I think, a key idea in sort of how we were thinking about our pivot, which is around the question of what is theater and what does theater do for people. And I think that we're a little more liberal in our thinking about this than many people. And for us, theater and the whole event of going to the theater is about community and having a communal experience. And we thought that was also the most important part for healing, frankly, so that it was always kind of not so much about how do we translate this play to a virtual digital screen format. TV does that real well. Films do that.
Very well.
We've experimented with multiple media, and they have turned into their own art forms. But what is it that theater does? And what is it that theater does that can be enhanced or supported or built upon by this new environment that we're in, so that we're not just putting an actor in front of a camera and saying hey, say some words in front of a green screen or in front of your living room. Netflix was already sort of doing better on that front. But can I read some stories and then open it up to the chat so that we have a common thing to talk about and a common way to process what we're going through as a society and as humanity, because I think that at its heart is the most important thing to us. Is the arts and theater help us process the difficult, disparate things, blips of events that happen in our world as a cohesive narrative that follows. This happened, and because of that, this happened, and because of that, this happened. Whereas the real world is a lot less cause and effect than that.
I think it's been challenging for you to define, like to redefine what the theater is, and then but it seems like you found it.
We have our version of it, I would say. Yeah. And I think, I think there'll be in sort of our business a long-term conversation about what the last year means for what theater is or what theater can be, which is really the question that I would like to be thinking about instead of what theater was, because a lot of what we think about theater and the performing arts, personal opinion, comes from sort of a model of making stuff that's based on the Industrial Revolution and factories. And I mean, when we think about a season of plays, that is basically like a factorization of art production, so that our audiences get what they want and they know exactly what they can expect for a year. And we slot in artists like interchangeable parts to produce that season of plays. And I think that we're at a sort of...
And that can be very toxic, I think.
It can. And I think we're at a sort of influx point culturally that maybe we move beyond that. And maybe there are some ways, because of the tools that we've gained through the pandemic, because we've had to engage with technology, that will make the economics a little more friendlier towards changing that.
Cool. So what are the moves that you made?
I'd say one of the big ones was finding a startup.
We became friends with a tech startup.
With GatherTown. And you were the one that stumbled upon them.
So Gather.town, it's a small startup, and they had just gotten started.
Local too.
Burlingame, I think, is where they're at least originally sort of were founded right before the pandemic, and they were doing the teleconferencing thing. And the thing for us was, Zoom events, yay, but also so it's limited. One person talking, and it's so limited in the kinds of interactions you can have. And so we were trying to find ways around it, whether it was live streaming on Twitch so that we can have the chat thread or whatever. And then we came across Online Town, which at the time was changing into GatherTown, which was this Legend of Zelda meets Zoom thing. And they were just trying to figure out what they were doing and sort of how to help folks in this pandemic. And one of the things and reasons we became really good friends is they were coming at this from a service perspective too. Instead of making the most money possible by landing upon a great new digital platform, every interaction we had was about like, how do we make this work for you, even if that doesn't make us the most money, because you're helping people connect.
And we want to connect people.
And so we were able to, using sort of this platform and spending time on this platform and learning it, build an event for incredibly forward-thinking organization, the Park and Arts Foundation of Redwood City, who were, trying to figure out what to do with their campout event, annual campout event. This was this September, August is when it normally happens. And kids needed some way to see their friends and be social. And they reached out to us and said, hey, you guys have been doing all of this really interesting streaming stuff, and that's a way to, get connected with an audience. Would you run a stream for us? And we said, we would love to do that. but it seems like this event wants to be even more interactive. Would you be game for like trying something? We've been trying something. And so
you brought up the new technology.
So we brought up the new technology, and we, we're just sort of building a little mini show that we were using to pay some artists and to learn about this technology. And we brought them into one of the maps that we'd made for it. And then that turned into, we should do this. And we had, I think, about 100 people engage with the event, 100 families engage with the event, all from their homes for like a 4-hour event. And there were kids running around
this little map, little avatars.
Like in this virtual world, and playing hide and seek with their friends. And it was really, really special and rewarding. And when we say the arts heal and the arts help with a crisis, it felt like we were actually walking the walk instead of saying like, and
here's a play.
Here's a play. It'll help you escape your troubles, which I think we can do better than.
What I learned from you too is that you were open-minded, like you embracing the new technology, and then you're also taking initiative. That you brought it up and to your partners, and to see that if they're open for this, and it all comes into the place like you mentioned, like theater is like building connections, and it's to enhance community. And then you're doing like what you're preaching, and I like it.
Thank you so much. And we've learned
a
lot from this year, and a lot from what we had to practice this year, because I don't know that we necessarily thought about our work in these terms when the pandemic hit. But I think we need to think about it in these terms, because the world is changing a lot. And I think we're at a place where there is a shift there are so many new media. And I think we need to start thinking about like the media and the art forms as separate concepts. And the idea of theater can exist across different media. The stage is one media.
Yes.
Yeah. And so what are the mistakes that you made?
All mistakes.
In crisis.
I talked too much. I've been really passionate about what I've been seeing wrong in our industry, in the nonprofit arts world. And I think sometimes overly so.
And I would almost say too, in the beginning when we were just kind of trying everything out, it was maybe a little too much. Like we definitely learned our limitations this past year too.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest mistakes that we've made, and I'm maybe still continuing to make a little bit, is just neglecting self-care. And
I've been trying to get better at that.
Perpetuating a culture in the arts of like, you have to sacrifice in order to be able to be here.
I hate that narrative.
Because, starving artist myth, and there is no money, and like, how can we change that so that people can be artists and also have families, for example?
Can support the families financially.
Yes, exactly.
And then still can pursue their dreams.
Right. Right. Instead of either, freelancing 100-hour week or working a 40-hour job and then doing a, 20 to 40-hour week freelance career in the arts. And that's just inhumane, and we shouldn't perpetuate it.
So what are the things that you did and to make Dragon Theater different from the industry?
I think one of the way that we're thinking about ticketing, we're kind of going away from the traditional season model. we're still figuring it out what we're really doing in
what
that
the
era.
process is.
Yeah. But I think that there is something there of the season system just felt very broken to begin with, and like we were saying, I feel like we can do better.
Yeah. We've been trying to change our artistic decision-making process so that it's more open, allows for more diversity, and is more equitable towards the artists who are actually doing the work of creating the art.
We both come from acting backgrounds, and so we've been there.
Yeah. And I think the other part of it is financially, our budgets look very different than what they did. We are trying to create sort of, instead of, and there has been sort of this conversation about AB5 and contractors in the arts versus employees. And on the heels of that, we're really trying to figure out and find ways so that we're not paying an actor $300 for 10 weeks of work.
Right.
That's not equitable. And even if the budgets and sort of the reality of the economics of our world don't allow us to guarantee anything more than $300, the reality of sort of the live events world is it's built on hits.
Yeah,
and what happens when you have a successful product is that the artists usually tend to still get the $300 or whatever, that set amount is. Stipend or some, there is a level at which people get living wages. How living wages are in the Bay Area, et cetera, is a whole different conversation. But with productions like that, if the artists who created them had revenue stakes, like we do in the startup world, for example, that could change things a great deal when a project is successful. Instead of the production company going, okay, I've got my, musical that's going to sell out all of the nights, and that's how I'm going to pay for my whole season, but everyone else is getting paid the same. We're trying to break out of that model and build everything with a revenue share to the artists who are creating work.
It takes a lot of compassion.
Yeah.
So now, I really enjoying chatting with you too. And now we're gonna take a little break, and we'll come back soon.
Sounds great.
为了生活在一个更公正的城市，在政治上更好地代表我们的社区，红木城正在创建一个重新选区咨询委员会，你我每个人都可以参加。这个委员会的目的是公正的，代表我们城市的巨大多样性。该委员会将向市议会提出关于我们地区边界新位置的建议，以及能够投票给每个代表。你如何报名呢？点击下面的表格，在6月6日前提交。所有申请将在市议会进行审查，在进行面试后，任命将在6月28日进行。参与进来吧！欲了解更多信息，请访问屏幕上显示的页面。谢谢。
In order to live in a more just city with better representation of our community in politics, a redistricting advisory committee is being created in Redwood City, and you, me, everyone can participate. This committee is intended to be impartial and representative of the enormous diversity of our city. The committee will create proposals to the City Council on the new locations of our district boundaries, as well as the people who will be able to vote for each of the representatives. How do you sign up? Click on the form below and fill it out by June 6th. All applications will be reviewed by the City Council, and after conducting interviews, appointments will take place on June 28. Get involved! For more information, visit the page shown on the screen.
Welcome back. What are the things that have been challenging in the past year?
You start.
Well, I think it's been a challenge for everybody is the staying at home, and because we are work partners and we're also husband and wife, so we're like always together. And like I said earlier, like it was a very good thing that like we helped each other get through it. But there's also been times when it's like, oh my God, I need to get away from you.
I'm gonna go for a drive now.
Yeah. So that's been a challenge, but I feel like that's been a challenge for everybody.
That's true.
And fair people are very touchy-feely, like people, and
yeah.
it's been really difficult trying to do all of this work, which is very vulnerable and emotionally connected, and and to do it across a screen, and to when our colleagues who are most frequently also our close friends, really, we don't have many friends outside of the people we work with the amount of time that we work, and not being able to hug them. Like that's when they're having a tough day, and seeing them every day and not being able to be there for folks on that level. And I guess it's that compassion thing, not being able to do more.
Yeah.
Like I hate reality, but at the end of the day, going like, okay, well, we can't hire 5 more artists this month because we're if something new doesn't happen, we are going to run out of money, and then that just ends everything that we're trying. And so forcing ourselves to be realistic when it comes time to be realistic has been
very challenging.
Very challenging. And having to say, no, you can't do that to artists has been very challenging. Or like, no, we can't do that. We don't have the resources. We can't keep this program going. We tried this. It was really cool, but right now, it's the coming to terms with our limitations, and helping folks maintain compassion towards themselves, because again, it's such an industry full of people who are overachievers. If especially if they're
givers,
It was kind of like you were limited in a box.
A Zoom box.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. So, what are the things that you have been doing outside of the box?
Outside. So we started the ABC project was something that was very much outside of the box, where it was like almost like a book club, but we were thinking of doing this for mostly our senior community who were really isolated during COVID time. And we wanted to have some kind of way to bring those folks together and feel a little less isolated. And so ABC Party Line came about, which is Audio Book Club. Yes. And we have a professional voice actor read a story, and participants come on the Zoom and listen, and then we open up the floor to like talk about like what we read about, and giving them a chance to communicate.
And one of the key sort of out of the box ideas for that was you can call on your phone.
On your phone, yeah. We wanted to make it super
accessible. This is an audio only experience. So for many folks who, especially early on, did not have access to Zoom, or were not about to figure it out yet.
You can call a number.
You can call a number and have access to this sort of social, communal activity. We got to, and this was in the Zoom box, but also incredibly cool. We got to partner with one of the writers of Key and Peele.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
And incredible fella who ran a sketch comedy writing class for several weeks, out of which we created a show. With
sketch comedy show.
Yeah, a little sketch comedy show. And this was like one of the first things that we were able to do when we were like, I don't know if we can pay people, but we can at least like pull this together and create this free professional development opportunity for artists in our network who had, many of whom had projects that they were going to be working on us with that we had to cancel because of COVID. We helped with a wedding.
Oh yeah, we did.
On this Gather.town platform. And that was like, that was really so nice. Sweet. We celebrated the opening of Sobre Mesa in Oakland, reopening
a restaurant.
Their chef is on Top Chef this year, but they were coming back to opening their outdoor dining, and so we partnered with them and some of our performers and created a pop-up stage outdoors once this was April. So as things were just opening up in Alameda County, and so now we're building on that.
Yeah, we're even going further outside of the box. We just started partnering with Redwood City Events to do a drive-in variety show.
Wow.
Yeah, and we're hoping that's going to kind of combine a lot of these ideas that we've been playing with in terms of like creating a safe communal experience that is as accessible as possible. Whereas something that, even though, regulations are opening up, a lot of people are vaccinated, there is still access issues with indoor stuff.
Right.
And also with doing a variety show, our goal is to include as many artists and arts organizations as possible, so that not only are we entertaining folks, but also we're peeling back the curtain a little bit and doing a little bit of audience education, so that, folks who come to the show, they might come and see San Jose Taiko do their amazing San Jose Taiko thing with the big drums and the dancing and the music, but also hear about like all of the work that they have been doing over the last year while they have not been producing events in person. All of the work that they have been doing, across the Japantown community in response to all of the hate that's been going on. Or, talking, bringing in some actors to do a short play and talking to the playwright about the play development process that sort of evolved over the last year with sort of the online play reading opportunities and things that we've discovered. So I'm hoping it's going to give a chance for folks who have been away from the arts for so long to kind of
reconnect with it.
Reconnect, and also maybe discover
something new,
stuff that they'd never even known about. And also sort of begin that conversation so that we're also, recognizing that we're all human across the artist who's on the stage and the audiences, and we've all been going through the same stuff.
So what are the positive parts that coming out of the crisis? Like what made art more accessible compared to it was prior to COVID?
So actually just recently I participated in an audition that was in New York, but we have an online program that it's all online. So it's like that you could totally be from New York and still participate in this program. So I went to those auditions, and I feel like that was a big positive. Of it's not just helping local artists, but we're also expanding it into other artists from like around the world. We had during the pandemic, a band from Ghana that performed for us. It was amazing. It was like 3 a.m. their time.
And I mean, we've been collaborating internationally since the summer, kind of regularly, and that sort of ability to get out of being locked geographically, I think, is going to be huge for us.
Yeah.
And finding ways to connect the local. It's that old saying, right? Think locally, act globally.
Right.
I think that we have more tools to allow us to actually do that because of the pandemic
Right.
and because of everything that we've discovered during this year.
Right. More technologies came up
Mm-hmm.
because of the pandemic, and people can leverage the new technologies and will be able to reach out to people worldwide.
Mm-hmm. And we've been building relationships that are a little less transactional.
Yes.
Because of the pandemic, and like across our industry too. Like this is where it's been really amazing, because a lot of theater organizations or other arts organizations or performing arts organizations, when we could look up from like, oh yeah, they have their show right on top of our show, and like we can't, and started talking about like, how can we collaborate instead of feeling like we're competing against each other, because we're not. We're competing against video games. We're competing against Netflix. We're competing against.
We have a lot of shared audience as well.
And like, how do we instead make this a lot more welcoming for folks to take part in live arts, and how can we make it possible so that folks who can't leave their homes can participate, because that's also been a huge thing, is especially like being part of immersive theater and site-specific things, accessibility for folks with mobility issues, accessibility for folks with chronic conditions, accessibility for folks now going forward who have sort of immune stuff. This is gonna be something that we're so much more aware of, and that we are not only thinking about but trying to address actively, I think, across the industry, and I think that's huge.
Yeah, what I love about you just said is like you really like carry the mission of a non-profit organization. You really carry that on your shoulder, and you really care about people and the community, and you are really like all you're focusing is on figuring out ways to connect the people. It's not like you're focusing on profit or your tickets, right? And it's all focusing on people. That's why I think even though COVID has never been a positive thing, but with a great heart, and we can always come up with some great things.
Yes.
It really crystallized for us. You're absolutely right. Like that, what is most important are the people, are our artists, and the conversation that happens between the audience and the artist. So that was a huge thing. I think a big positive takeaway from a very negative time.
Yeah.
Right. So this is a live talk show. It seems like we have a couple comments here, and so what is the comment?
So many creative business and survival ideas came out of this. I hope every creative enterprise in the Bay Area is watching. Keep black.
Well, keep watching our show, and then you will get more creative ideas and the resources and information as well, because our show is bridging small local, especially local business with the local organizations, and we want to bring out the positivities and also creativities as well, and also hope and to people's lives, and also telling you that there is a will, there is a way, and as long as you are seeking for good, you can always find it.
Absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely. And here it is out here, if there is any way we can help find those creative solutions, that is kind of one of the new directions and missions and goals of the Dragon as an organization, is like, how do we take the skills that we have in creative problem solving as theater artists, and help folks apply it to their situations, to their causes, to their businesses, whether they're creative enterprises or not. Because ultimately, a lot of what we do these days revolves around storytelling. And that is what we say as theater artists we do. And it's not just putting on plays that playwrights have written 500 years ago.
Right. So talking about creativity, you just mentioned that you're partnering with the city of Redwood City and you're going to have a drive-in show. So tell us more about the drive-in show.
Yes, the at the Port, Dragon's Drive-In Variety Show. So it's set up outside, and there's a big. How big is the screen? It's like
15 by 20 feet, big jumbotron.
Yeah.
Really fun.
That is recording what's happening on stage. So while you're in your car, you can see, if you're in the back row, what's going on. And the idea of that is we're trying to get as many local and also outside entities to come and put on an entertaining show. So you'll see something different every night.
Yeah.
And you're going to host.
Yes, I'm going to be the host. And this is really, this is something else that's come out of the pandemic, right? Is we've had opportunities to sort of tighten the net and reconnect with so many of the artists and arts organizations in the Bay Area, the surrounding areas, and sort of as wide as international net of folks who do the kinds of things that we love. And so this hopefully is an opportunity for folks to get to see taiko and mime and plays and magic and stand-up comedy and singing, and not just be entertained by these folks, but also in conversation get a little bit of a behind the scenes of what these worlds are like and what the last year has been like, and how folks who want to re-engage with the arts can best do so and can best support organizations and artists who are kind of now struggling more than they were in the sort of middle ground of the pandemic, when, we kind of had hit a routine, for the lack of a better term. And now everyone is trying to pick up all of the sort of things that they had put down when the pandemic hit, and also keep spinning the plates that they put up into the air during the pandemic, and do it after sort of whatever financial and resource burn that has happened to survive throughout the pandemic. So this is a great opportunity for folks to get to know a bunch of different artists and arts organizations and learn how you can best support the arts as we come back.
Wow, very cool. I can't wait to be part of it.
Me neither. Thank you.
So what's the date?
We are kicking off on the 4th, and then it's going to be Fridays and Saturdays all through June, with the exception of June 19th. We're taking Juneteenth off. And yeah, shows are at 8:30. The screen is difficult to see when the sun is in that sunset spot. So we sort of did the math on when the sunset's supposed to be, and the show starts right after the sun goes below the horizon line in that magic hour.
And we'll have some fun pre-show trivia.
Yeah, and that's the other part of the event is we want to, even though people are in their cars, we want to make this social. So pre-show, we're going to open up the lot for about an hour in advance of the show. If folks want to arrive early, there will be trivia and possibly some other interactive activities.
Sing-alongs, I don't know.
Sing-alongs, I don't know. We're thinking of options that allow for people to be safe in their cars and still have opportunities to sort of break that fourth wall
Feel like they're a part of
Very
something.
cool.
and be part of a communal experience that does not consist just of their car.
Very cool. So how can they find more information?
They can go to www.dragonproductions.net, and information's right on there. They can also go look up Redwood City Events, and we are on the Redwood City Events webpage. And come visit us or check us out on our Facebook page. All of the information is available. We're very active on Facebook. Come follow us.
Yes.
Sounds great and sounds promising. And thank you so much and for being on the show and sharing all those great creativities and during pandemic, and which really brings a lot uplifting energy here in our studio. And I already felt the great vibes. And thank you so much, and really appreciate you too.
Thank you. We appreciate what you're doing here, shedding a light on the positivity during difficult times.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us, and stay tuned for our upcoming show and from Dragon Theater, and also our weekly show next Thursday. I'll see you then. Bye.